Be a gospel ranger. Walk by faith in my Savior. I want to be a gospel ranger.
WPRZ, Gospel Rangers Outdoor Ministries, with host, country recording artist Steve Conover and his brother in the Lord, Jim Hobbs. They'll be telling you all about how to become gospel rangers.
Jesus came to earth as flesh. He walked with us, and that's a fact.
That song's about 20 years old, Dale.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Jim Hobbs. Got
I'm
Steve
Steve
Conover. Yes, we do, and we are honored to have a brother that has pointed to a way that we really have appreciated, have embraced, and I'll introduce him now. Dale Hoffman, Dale Allen Hoffman, and we'll be posted his links to our site. He's got some specials for us Gospel Rangers. So, but I just want to say a few things about Dale. Steve found Dale through someone else. Send me his link. I instantly started watching his stuff. I bought his entire collection, Dale. I bought your entire collection. I remember calling you last year when you ran it on the Christmas special or whatever, and I was like, hey, can you just hold it for one more day? And so I was able to get the entire collection, and it absolutely changed my world and how important the Aramaic love language of Yeshua that he spoke, especially the Lord's Prayer. I did a Easter service down by the river this past spring, and I read that and gave copies of the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. And I don't think there was a dry eye around that circle on the river bend. So thank you, brother, for the work that you've put into translating what was really spoken. And for those who do not understand what we're speaking of, I hope you will stay with us tonight. I hope you will visit his website. I hope you will read his books. I hope you will understand how important this love language of what was spoken by Yeshua, or Jesus, as most people know him by. But it's an honor to have you on here, Dale. So welcome to the Gospel Ranger Show.
What am I supposed to say after all that? Thank you. Yeah, it's my life. I mean, it's that simple. I not in any negative way whatsoever, in as uplifting a way I can possibly say, as I laid my life down for this. It started when I was 7 years old, and it just kept layering and layering until ultimately I just went, okay, I'm obviously here for this. So, yeah, thank you. I'm honored.
No, thank you, and that there's a lot of stuff we could talk about, but tell me how you got on this path. Tell everybody who's watching this, whether live or replay, how you got to this point.
Well, interesting time to be asking me, since you both know, we just laid my father to rest a few days ago, and the minister from when I was a child actually did the service, from small town New Jersey, southern New Jersey, but my grandmother was a pillar in the Methodist church, and we had to go. My mother didn't go, but my brother, my sister, and I went every single Sunday to this Evangelical United Methodist Church, Clarksboro, New Jersey. And at one point, we were also going to the Episcopalian Church. Like about an hour and a half later, we'd walk over there. And I don't know, something happened in the summer of my 7th year. It would have been 1979. I was having a lot of what one would call epiphanies, transcendent moments with the Bible, where I'm seeing, and I got to say this before I say this. This is something I didn't really say until I wrote this in my book, because I kept it to myself. I didn't even talk to my friends about this, because in one aspect, I didn't want to sound like I was a nutcase, although now I don't care about that. And the other aspect, I didn't want people thinking I was quote unquote special. So I just didn't talk about it. But I was 7 years old, summer of 1979, Vacation Bible School, and I'm looking down, and the teacher, who was the mother of one of the kids in the class, she was directing us with from the Gospel of Matthew, Matthias, and Aramaic. I didn't know that then, but lay up for yourself treasures in heaven where moth and rust do not destroy, especially, or etc. And everybody's talking about heaven as this place, location. After you die, you drop dead, you go to this place. And I was kind of questioning, like, I didn't say it out loud. I'm like, it didn't make sense to me. And I'm like, where does it say that it's only some place that comes later? If it seemed to me like Jesus is talking about something happening now. And then I looked down at the page on the Bible, and I saw, the only way I can really explain this, like within the pages, within like dimensions within the pages, almost like an outline, how you write an outline, but in different, I now know as languages, in different colors, in different sort of depths within the page. I saw these different interpretations, and somewhere in the one at the lowest level it's almost like it was a fire, but it wasn't burning. I don't know how else to put that. And I remember laying my hand on the page right above it to see if it felt hot, and it didn't. And I realized, wait a second here, I'm lit up from this book, from the Bible, and I realized the room was dark. And I remember looking up, and the teacher's looking at me, and I'm sure my face was red. I looked guilty of something, and she's like, "Are you coming?" And I'm like, okay. And I realized there's nobody else in the room. And I remember walking outside into the hallway with all the kids, and I walked down the steps of the church to go out to the little baseball diamond and playground, which is behind the church. It's not there anymore. I drove by there just a few days ago. And I remember that it's like the trees were whistling, but they weren't whistling. And I saw like little twinkles of lights, although I didn't see lights. It's hard to explain this. The way I explain it to people is it's like being a guitarist all my life. I could get my sound dialed in perfectly, through an amp or something like that. And then there's little things you can use, like a sonic maximizer, that it's almost like you get your sound dialed in, and then all of a sudden you realize there was a blanket over the speakers and somebody took it off. Or you're going up a mountain and all of a sudden your ears pop and you realize, wait a second, I was almost deaf the way my ears were. Now all of a sudden I can hear. There was this presence. There was a shine to everything. It was like everything was alive. And that experience kept repeating itself for me year after year after year. Sometimes I would sit down and just riff on the words of Jesus. I didn't talk to my friends about it. They all thought I was nuts. And it just come to me. Crazy as it may sound, I had experiences, very transcendental experiences out in the woods day after day during my parents' divorce, where I felt like I was just being torn apart. It wasn't the words in the book. It wasn't the words in the Bible. There was a living, breathing essence, presence within there that somehow opened up in my heart. And it's been there ever since that time, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I learned a lot about Greek, Hebrew, Arabic, all these different things. But there was just something in the Aramaic that kind of stopped me and went, wait. And then, of course, you mentioned, if we want to mention Dr. Michael Rice, of course, I wouldn't be here without him, because it was finally someone saying, a friend of mine down in Florida years ago, they're like, you got to go see Dr. Rice. And I'm like, Dr. Rice? And he's like, yeah, he does the Aramaic. And I'm like, is that like a dance, the Aramaic? And he went, no. He said, that's the language Jesus spoke. And I went, he didn't speak English? And everybody in the room starts laughing. And I'm like, wait, what's so funny about that? They're like, English didn't even exist. And then I went, whoa, hold the phone. And I went to see Michael in the first workshop in Clearwater, Florida. This would have been 1995. I'd already been doing some breathwork processes of him for 2 years at that point. But I remember him coming up to me at the break, and I walked up to him and I said, whatever you've got, I want it all. And he was like, I feel like I could peel you off the ceiling, young man. And a couple months later, I'm at his house, at his center out in Missouri, in the Ozarks heartland. And I just dove in head first. So,
Awesome.
And I kept going.
Well, I think that's probably how we felt when we came across you. And, the beauty of not only the Aramaic, but something that's been very much a part of our walk for the last few years is the vibration and the frequency and how that plays a major role. And so one of the things that we talk about is you cannot, like Steve says, he doesn't even like to talk anymore.
Understand.
Right. And so there's no words for that which we are feeling inside, that vibration, that I love frequency, whatever you want to call it. It's something that is beyond words. And so as beautiful as the Aramaic language is, I love the fact that you kind of bring it all together. And I don't know what the name of that device you have, the pyramid thing, but I love that thing. That thing, I got to get one.
Paradigm.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a thing called the Beamer, but that's a whole different thing. But it still uses.
I know Beamer very well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
All right. Gotcha. Steve, you're smiling. What you got to share, brother?
Oh my! No, I'm just where two or more come together is happening right now, and I'm just happy. One of the questions I wanted to ask Dale is just learning enough Aramaic to get in trouble. Is there a great difference between ancient Aramaic, the Middle Aramaic, and what we call now modern Aramaic? I mean, how does that all break out, and which one would Jesus have spoken? The ancient one?
Well, it depends on how deeply you want to dig, honestly. And it depends on who you ask is another aspect. They're different. There's really not even necessarily a modern Aramaic so much as what we have is very, very, very closely threaded within Assyrian. Modern Assyrian.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, a lot of people don't realize that in the Kurdistan Mountains, just outside of Damascus now, which would have taken days or even weeks to get to from Damascus into those mountains back in Yeshua's time, but there's three little towns, Jubadan, Baka, and Malula, which have been over and over pillaged, and the temples are destroyed, etc. Bashar Assad's been on an active journey to try to destroy the language ever since he took power from his dad. And of course, Assad's a dentist; he's not a politician, and I think we can see the proof of that. But they're all quite a bit different. I'll say that what's believed to be the closest known surviving dialect close to what Yeshua would have spoken is what's happening in those Kurdistan mountains. As an example, if you listen to like a more of an Eastern dialect, Rocco Arabic, just the Lord's Prayer would be like a wound wishmeya nithkadesh shach. That's cool. If you go over toward more Western dialect, you've got like Abund Vashmaya Nitkadash Shmak. If you go into the Kurdistan mountains, though, it's something a bit different. Abunak Tabishmu Yikaraka Smaks. It's totally and completely different in pronunciation. Now, in terms of meaning, are they different? Then you start getting into a really complicated place because just like in English, as an example, people can say something. The example I often give is, let's say that I'm in France with my cousin Deborah, who lives on the French Riviera, halfway between Spain and Monaco. Nice place to live. She's an artist, a potter, of course. And let's say that I'm talking to a friend of hers, and I say to her, I don't speak French, tell him that he's bad. And she goes, Dale says you are no good. He says you are bad. And I'm like, whoa, that's not what I'm saying. Tell him I said he's cool. She's like, okay. Dale says you have a very low body temperature and that you order on being cold. No, that's not what I'm trying to get across. So what I'm saying is the hardest aspect of the work that I do is is almost like needing to pierce through the shells of belief of what people would consider to be fact about what things meant, mean, things like the drift of the way things are pronounced, the drift of how things are understood and interpreted, etc. in the end, like with all of the Aramaic study for decades, I got to a place where, like you say, you don't want to speak anymore. It's like I have zero interest in, it's not that I don't want to, share things with people, but my interest in sort of convincing fell away quite a while back.
Right.
I feel like the experiential core of what he was really trying to communicate came alive within me. I don't think I would have found that. I know I wouldn't have found that without the Aramaic, but the Aramaic wasn't the end of my journey. It was almost like it was a milepost that kept me on track, kept me out of too much theology, too much psychology, too much this, that. Because if you go and you look at linguistic experts, quote unquote, none of them agree on anything about Aramaic. They all have different opinions. So it's like 10 people being at one car accident, and the insurance adjuster or the officer shows up, have 10 different stories of what happened. So truth becomes, something that becomes very, very questionable unless it's that truth that's the direct experience that goes beyond words. And that's really what I'm here for.
Right. And even in the Greek, the word for truth actually means reality. And everybody's personal reality is actually dependent on their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So when, if we all just sit around and debate whose thoughts, feelings, and emotions are more viable than each other's, it's not going to be much fun. But what Jim and I were talking about earlier today, because of your last video, when Jesus uses the word evil, we in Western culture, especially within the churches, have a very definite definition of what evil is. And of course, it's what everybody else does, not what I do. But what I instantly thought of when you were talking about, and I'll let you describe the word and what it actually means, was not the scripture that you talked about, was when Jesus said an evil generation seeks a sign. I'm like, I never thought about it that way, but here's a bunch of people wanting to know about the future, right? So I wanted to throw that by and see how much that played into him saying that. Like, if an evil generation seeks a sign, a generation fully ripe would have no interest in eschatology, period, right?
That's it exactly. And, sometimes people will often come to me at events and they read, one book, so they're an expert now. And they'll start firing questions almost like in a challenging manner. And years ago, of course, I'd get my dander up. I don't anymore. It's funny to me because, and it's funny, I've actually sat with that, like evil generation. Generation is essentially, it's almost like if you're looking at a wellspring of water, and you'll see water, especially if you want to think of the living water phrase, but you see almost like it gurgles and it comes through in waves. What that would essentially mean, an evil generation would be that after a while, let's say that you have this beautiful spring of water, but then on the sides, like right around on the sides of the well, all of a sudden there's oil and there's gas and all these things that are starting to leak in and contaminate. This outer sort of contamination is a good way to put it. What is the contamination for a human that makes them not be present? What is the contamination that would make them evil? It would be this, not necessarily your thoughts, etc., but being outside of the present moment. That word for good, when Yeshua talked about good soil, you have those seeds, you throw that onto good soil. That word good actually means right. It's tub or tauba, depending on which way it's used. And that's soil that's fertile like humus. It's dark, rich earth. It's right timing. It's fertile. It's the air and the water can move through it, okay? As opposed to evil soil, which would be arid. It doesn't have much for nutrients. It's almost like this orange Carolina clay that we have down here in North Carolina. The difference between those really, though, in terms of us as spiritual seekers, etc., is the ripeness is when those moments when we're wholly, fully present right here and right now. I mentioned before we started recording, like the birth of my children, and it's like I would never even want to dumb down that experience of trying to explain what that was really truly fully like for me. It's one of those experiences that are so fully rich and ripe that I don't even have words for it, and I wouldn't want to disrespect it to put the words on it, as opposed to the evil, which is when you're lost in the past, you're lost in the future. Either you're the regurgitation of some kind of past event, or a future that somehow the fear of an impending future, sufficient unto not the day. That word isn't day in Yeshua's language of Aramaic. It's actually the moment. Sufficient unto Yauma. This moment here are the evils, or all of those thoughts that are pulling me out of the present moment. The next moment shall take care of itself. And there's the fun thing. Who's ever met the next moment? Nobody. You never will meet the next moment. You only have this one. Take care of this one. The next one will take care of itself because it doesn't exist. Funny how that works. You take care of this moment, then the next moment is now, and the next moment is now, which is then. Now, which is then. And it's all about that. It's almost like,
Daily bread.
I was going to say the good friend of mine that wrote the foreword to my book, Steve Vai, amazing guitar player. And Steve and I have these deep conversations about how he loves to get on top of the note, and he'll have these flurries of fast notes coming, and somehow all of a sudden he's aware of each and every note as it passes and the space between the notes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that holy, fully present. That's what that ripeness really is. The evilness is, are you really fully present with what you're doing, or are you worried about something in the future or regurgitating something in the past?
And as a songwriter, I can tell you one of my least favorite sayings in the business is the subject of dead air, and which doesn't exist. One of my favorite things in a song, a pregnant pause, so to speak, giving birth to what is vibrationally happening in the song. But you just led into something that so many of these great teachings, that just these subtle things we're talking about, how the present moment is the fertile soil. The parable of the kingdom being seed and fertile soil, but it also comes upon the subject of daily bread, and back to what we call the Lord's Prayer, right? And something that in this face-to-face worship with Allah, with the one and only being that we are a part of, that daily bread becomes real. Like, it's not daily, it's now. And is it what Jesus said to his disciples when they walked up on a well, and he laughs at him and says, "I got food you know nothing about"? Is that what he's talking about?
Well, it's amazing. In the what we call the Lord's Prayer, that phrase, "Hablan lachma dasun kanan yomana," give us this day our daily bread. First of all, that word, it's not day. I was just kind of mentioning moment. The word here is yaumana. Yauma. First of all, there's no word for day in Aramaic. No word exists for day, week, month, year. That word yauma means a moment in time, okay? Now, but in the Lord's Prayer, we'll get to the bread in a moment. I want to get to this first, that give us this day, is actually not yauma, but yaumana. Mana is an Aramaic word that means what is it? It means there's some deeper thing here, but I can only find its truth in this moment. Now, mana is what we pronounce as manna. Manna was what fell from heaven. Of course, where's heaven? In the sky, right? No, I don't think so. So if you watch all the great Bible movies, there's pita pockets that are like slamming people in the head and knocking them over while they're in the desert. Wrong point. Okay, totally the wrong point. Mana, it means true divine sustenance from within. And one of the ways I explain this to people is, let's say that, there's a big, huge, whatever, 20K race for a child, and they're trying to raise money for her cancer, for her hospital bills or something like that. And you get 15K in, and you just, the tank is empty, you run out of gas. Then all of a sudden you look over, and there she is on the sidelines, and you feel this like welling up. That's the manna. The manna is like those moments when you're in the desert, you're wasted and bare and empty. You finally are completely emptied out and you let go. All of a sudden that divine sustenance comes through you, lifts you back up. And of course you go through the next 5K like it was nothing, like it was the beginning of the race. That happens when you're fully present in this moment. So give us in this present moment the manna, the divine sustenance. The sister word of manna is lachma. Lachma is the word bread. Bethlehem, Beit Lahem, the house of bread. Funny though, lachma again means true sustenance from within, just like manna. So what that's really saying is, the way that I often explain that when I'm speaking about the Lord's Prayer is, it's about allowing me that pure, clear vision, insight, realization, inspiration, all of that eternal fire coming through me in every present moment that I am awake. That will be there only when I'm awake in that moment. And that's what it is. It's not some simple thing like every day I'm going to get a piece of bread. It has absolutely nothing to do with it, actually. It has to do with, look, every time I allow myself to be fully present right now in this moment, I will connect into that living water. I will connect into that wellspring, the manna, the lachma. It's right here and it's right now.
Well, Dale, do you think that's what Yeshua was talking about when he was in, I think it's Matthew 23, in regards to when he was talking to the religious leaders, saying that you guys, you religious scholars, you Pharisees, you're frauds, you're pretenders, you do all you can to keep people from experiencing the now. Like you do everything for the reality of kingdom, the heaven kingdom that's within them. And not only do you refuse to enter it yourself, you forbid anybody else to enter it because you're always making it about a future event or a building, an exterior thing, when the reality of it, it's right here.
Absolutely. And it's funny because he says, that in which you judge another, you are guilty of practicing. And then he throws a word out that gets thrown around a lot these days, and it's the word hypocrite.
All right.
Now that word hypocrite in Aramaic is ape. Ape. It means, if you want to look at it, it could mean person. It comes from, if you want to look in Latin, it's the word persona, okay? Which, if you go back to the Aramaic, and it's also, I'll say this, that word hypocrite in Aramaic is the same word as veil. When you hear the veil in the doorway of the temple, veil, okay? What that word means, ape, in Aramaic, it means mask. And what it was it was a mask that the actor would wear in a divine play. They would begin the play with this mask. And by the end of the play, hopefully they were able to transcend and drop the mask and their true essence would shine through. So when he's calling them a hypocrite back then, they're not thinking of it like we are, talking out of two sides of the mouth. He's saying, look, that's not your true self that judges. That's not your true self that's out here praying for everybody to see. That's not your true self that's in the physical man-made temple, that's throwing all these prayers and all of the swinging your little canister of charcoal back and forth. Not that there's something bad in that. I can tell that it's your mask, because if it was your true essence, you wouldn't have any of the judgment of me. So everything you see in me is actually in truth in you. And I'm clear enough to say that. And he called them on their stuff, and that's the last thing anybody wants, is to be called on their stuff in public. And look what happened to him as a result. So,
well, don't you think that happens? Don't you think that happens to us too, when we start to literally quote or follow the life lived out by Yeshua? People want to sit there and start bringing teachings of man, whether it's teachings of Paul or teachings of their pastor or teachings of this person. Oh, I spoke to Pastor so-and-so and he says you're, a heretic. You need to breathe.
Oh, I've never heard that. Heretic. So heretic.
Great word.
Heretic. Heretic is an ancient Koine Greek word. Hereses. It means to choose. The heretics were the people that made their own choices. They were not going with, and I'm not knocking Catholicism, but Catholic means universal, not as in cosmic, but rather everybody must believe this. And the heretics, if you go back to Irenaeus, you go back to Constantine, you go back to Pope Innocent III and all these, bless their hearts, dogs that represented the quote unquote word of God back then, they didn't like the heretics because the heretics were awakening that within themselves. They didn't need the book. They didn't need the physical structure. They found it within themselves. They had that true realization.
The original Gnostics.
Yes, the original real ones, not the modern Gnostics today that are so into all of the stuff in their head and they're not finding it in their heart. So.
Yeah.
Well, how are you received? How are you received when you do go to buildings made by man now? How are you received with this teachings? I mean, because it is, listen, and I think it's awesome because until we start to realize we are all one and that we are all one, instead of trying to do the whole dividing through theology or doctrine, but how are you received when you go to a church made or a building made by man?
It really depends on the place. They all have their own flavor. I'll put it this way: I'm not invited into many Catholic churches, white Baptist churches. Music.
I was going to say Southern Baptist.
Folks calling.
Not going to happen.
Yeah. I want to say that because it's the white Southern Baptist churches, not all of them, that have issues. The black Southern Baptist churches that I've been in, it's amazing. They're built on slavery. They're built on the awful things that were done to their culture, and somehow they found joy and presence in that. And regardless of what they believe, they're amazing, and their hearts are alive. Their souls are free, no matter what. But let's just put it this way. I pick and choose where I'm going to go simply because it's why I love YouTube, because I can put something on YouTube and it stands on its own and all the comments are disabled. Nobody can comment on my YouTube channel because I would I would put a video up and someone read one book, so they were an expert, of course, and they would write a really stupid comment and then I'd spend 2 hours replying to that and then they'd write stupid again. And I went, you know what? Let them put it on Facebook and tear me apart there, say whatever they want. Thumbs down, I don't care. Thumbs down, at least that means I got a response. Because I know that they're not hearing what I'm saying, they're hearing what that resonates within them. That's how the human mind works. So I don't take it personally. As a matter of fact, I find inspiration when people look and you know what, you're a bald-faced liar. And I'm like, thank you, I appreciate it. That it took a long time to get to that place. It's not accepted in a lot of places. And I would love to say I see the tide turning. And I mean, tide turns, at all times. But, I don't know. I also see in the last few years in America, people holding on to their phobias, their judgments, their fear, their racism a little more intensely than they have, in years past before that. But the beautiful thing about that is, it's like when you find yourself in the middle of the desert, the thing that I always remembered was, or if you find yourself in hell, keep going. Right. So
great song.
Rather
Great
than
song.
the judgment. Yeah. And it's not about an orange-headed monster in a big white house. It's about us finding inside of ourselves the place in us that wants to jump on that and attack it. Because that's what we need to remove within ourselves. This is a great moment of awakening, whether it seems that way or not. So
it is.
Yeah.
Well,
It
is an amazing time of awakening, and I think it seems a little harsh because we have so many timbers to remove from our own eye, so to speak. Which you kind of teed me up on this, and I've been wanting to talk to you about this too, because another foundation of Christianity is Jesus saying, unless a man takes up his cross daily and denies himself and takes up his cross daily, he can't follow me. But I started to look into the word for cross, and it doesn't actually say cross. It's the timber, the cross part. But the more that I looked at that, and the more that I meditated upon it, he could just as easily be talking about if a man doesn't remove his own cross from his eye, the timber from his own eye, he can't see clearly enough to follow. And I think that we we're seeing so much harshness, not just in the church, but everywhere. It's politics, it's business, it's everywhere. Because, you know, we're being compressed spiritually to the point where you're either going to have to remove it and ascend, basically, or you're going to go down. I mean, I don't think, I think we have so much death, whether it's suicide, drug doses, you know, whatever it is, wars, catastrophes, all this stuff going on at the very same time that so many are also finding this revelation of oneness with the Father and ascending out of it. So I don't know, you know, do you have a take on that? You know, that famous,
Absolutely.
if a man doesn't deny himself daily and take up his own cross, I mean.
Well, let's look at the idea of the cross. The cross comes, it's Akkadian, Phoenician, Sumerian, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, around a long time before Jesus.
Right.
The upside, so we've got the vertical aspect of a cross, which was considered our eternal nature, that which is not born, not die. There's no beginning, there's no end. And then the cross point, which comes across, this is the beam, this is the human self. This is the self that's born and dies. This is the part that gets locked in that physical body. And we suffer at the cross point of the crux. The word excruciate means to suffer at the cross point between the eternal nature of that which we are and the human nature, which is trying to grow, expand, realize, awaken to become more of that which it already is. And the more we try, rather than allowing ourselves to have the silence, the presence in this moment to awaken to the realization that we already are that, the more we suffer. And it's just like people will come to me and they're like, my God, Dale, I didn't know when you started me on this path 20 years ago that I was going to like go into the pits of hell for 10 years. And I'm like, and you're blaming that on me? And it's like, no, they're like, look, they're like, all hell broke loose. Like, good, thank you. And it's a funny thing. Go to Michael Rice and say you're sick. He'll be like, oh, blessings, healing crisis. And it's true. It's exactly, absolutely it. As soon as you acknowledge that and you start to stoke fire, all that garbage, all the stuff that's stuck, all the beams and the motes, they all of a sudden start to become really obvious, and you realize that you're not seeing clearly. You've got all these splinters and thorns, etc. And we suffer right there. And it takes a while for us to keep going and keep going. I have a one-on-one mentoring program I've been doing for years. I mentioned Nia Peoples, and I mentor people in like Australia, all over Europe, parts of Asia, the US and Canada. And one of the things that a lot of them are like, wait, they're, wow. It's like the more I wake up, it seems almost like things sometimes get more intense for a while. And I'm like, it's really important to keep going. Take care of the present moment. Take care of the present moment. Take care of the present moment. Remember that you're breathing. Remember to breathe. Allow whatever's moving in the moment. Take care of this moment. Take care of this moment. Take care of this moment. Write the word breathe everywhere, all over the place, in your car, on your walls. Breathe, take care of this moment. And there's going to be a point, it might not be next week, next month, next year, it might not even be in this decade, where you're all of a sudden going to realize, wait a second, my load is a little bit lighter. And then all of a sudden, a while past that, you're going to realize, here you are in that same situation that you would have flown off the handle about before, and now you don't even feel it. And then you start to realize, wait a second, I haven't had an issue with that in a long time. And then there comes to a point where you don't even think about that anymore. And it does get lighter, but you have to keep going. You have to keep going, because we do suffer, and we start to set up that stress point of trying all the workshops, all of this, all of that, to become better, when really it's not about what we acquire, it's about what we go of. And that's really the essence of the teaching.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because you have an awesome print right behind your left shoulder.
My other left shoulder. This one?
Your other left shoulder, yeah. You know, just is recorded saying in much of the Apocrypha, humanity is truth and error strangely mixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the I had been on this mission, especially lately, and about casting out my 7 demons.
Yeah.
And you know, there was a time just a few years ago, if you had brought this up to me, I would have probably laughed at you.
I understand.
But that one moment I was talking to you about, where I watched this guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I started meditating a little bit, and I stumbled into this place that Jesus talked about, where my eye was, for a second, my eye was single.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I wanted to go deeper. So let's talk about that a little, as much as you want to talk about it. But, you know, the whole concept of a demon and the importance of, so you've said this many times, that the word repentance doesn't mean what we think it means. And in my meditation, that's what I discovered. I discovered repentance really is the perspective of changing from out there to in here.
Exactly.
And I found that treasure buried in a field. Mm-hmm. And it started a process of me of finding out what those chakras or energy centers are, and let you kind of riff on from here. But you know, for those who are watching this that are ready for this, I can just tell you personally that my experience in the kingdom, my experience of the heavenly realms, it's over your left shoulder.
Well, you know, I feel like I should have a little bell thing near me. I've got a little candle here, though. The way to explain that word demon in the Gospel of the Gospel of Mark, Marcus, it's in Mark, is it chapter 16, I believe. A lot of Bibles only go to chapter 15 in Mark, which is an interesting thing. Some go from 6, also go up to 21. Shh, you're not supposed to know these things. But in Mark chapter 16, it talks about Jesus encountering Mary Magdalene, out of whom he cast out 7 demons. Shabea, Shiadein, Pek. Shabea is the word 7. Shiadein is the word for demon. It's called devils, etc. What demon means is essentially this. Let's say this is like a toning bowl that goes dong, or a bell or something. Demon is this. Something that is a force, a spirit that's not voicing. It's not freely voicing. Almost like you go up to a piano and you lift up the cover and you put your hand down on the string and someone walks over and they're muted, plunk, 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 or you put your hands on the guitar strings, ching, 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 that muting, okay? Now what it means to cast out is apek, which means to stimulate the movement of something, or the voicing, to allow the voicing. So if I was able to take my hands away from this and it was a bell, it would start going doink, 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 ding, 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 ding. What it actually means to cast out demons is, in his cultural understanding, would have been essentially those places within the self, within the energy body, etc., within the body temple, the Haikla, that we've closed on. Yes, absolutely. Those experiences we've had that were traumatic, intense, embarrassing, all these different things. Also experiences that were so beautiful we couldn't process them. It's not just quote unquote bad stuff, including moments when there's, you know, like I say, the birth of a child, moments of transcendence, amazing music, and your breath catches. When your breath catches, it locks that in the system. That's not necessarily quote unquote a bad thing, such as, you know, I remember the birth of all 3 of my children as if it's a videotape in my mind. I can't explain it in words. Amazing, because I'm sure my breath went, and yet you can also look at it like a 3-year-old girl and her drunken father's coming home, and she wants to give him his ashtray because she knows he's going to want a cigarette, and he walks in the door drunk, and she goes to give him the glass ashtray, but instead it flies off the table and smashes on the ground, and he gets on top of her and screams her down into the fetal position on the floor. Doesn't touch her at all, screaming his head off. One thing she's not doing, she's not breathing. It's going to lock into her system, and then she's going to be 33 years old, and she's going to be in a relationship with whoever, and she's going to be looking at that beloved in her life partner, and all of a sudden, maybe they're going to have alcohol on their breath, maybe they'll say just the right thing, whatever. All of a sudden, that demon, all of a sudden, that experience activates itself, and it lays itself over this moment, and she's no longer seeing her partner at the age of 33. She's seeing her father from the perspective of a 3-year-old, but she doesn't see her father. She just sees the partner with that experience on top. And all of a sudden, she looks at that person that she's been in love with for however long and says, I feel like I don't even know who you are anymore. Unfortunately, it's not them. It's not them. And that doesn't take away accountability. It does not, accountability in relationship, calling people on their stuff, etc. But you're able to do that from a place of responsibility, the ability to respond, a place of response rather than reaction. And you can have a good, clean, pure experience in a relationship without needing to make the other person pay for something you don't want to feel within yourself. There's no demons outside. We have this idea that the demons come in and take over the body. No. What comes in, and this is one more minute here, because this is something Michael Rice says, there's no better explanation I've ever heard. He's like, let's rope off a 1-foot square patch of grass, lawn, and then go 10 feet away or so, rope off another square foot patch. And let's get readings of both of those patches 10 feet away from each other, of, as he says, bugs, buzzards, creepy crawlies, bacteria, contaminants, whatever. They're probably going to be about the same. But then let's take the carcass of a dead rabbit and drop it over here on this 1-foot square patch in the middle of a nice humid summer day and come back 24 hours later. Do you think the readings of the creepy crawlies are going to be higher where the carcass was? Of course they are. But what we do is we mistakenly look at all the creepy crawlies, the bugs, and the buzzards as the demons that came in to inhabit. But the problem was the dead energy, the place where the energy wasn't moving within your temple. The carcass is that place within ourselves that we're not looking, we're not allowing it to speak, we're not allowing it to voice. We don't even know how to. Our culture doesn't show that. But of course, Yeshua was teaching that. He was showing us how to do that. And that's through the process of forgiveness, of being able to remove the root of the suffering, remove those incongruent, inharmonious frequency patterns from the system to allow that to voice again. But when it comes back out, it often feels and looks just like it did going in. A lot of times it's traumatic, and as Michael also says, it's not Dr. Feelgood. It's looks like a dark night, but in truth, you have to go through that to get to the place where you're able to be able to allow those situations to breathe when normally you would lock the breath up and just throw more junk into your backpack, so to speak. So it's beautiful when you start to realize that. It's not about an outside demon that's going to come in and Linda Blair, twist your head around 180 degrees or whatever. So.
No, and I even started looking at some of these circumstances that amplify that timber in your eye as the mirror that's required for you to remove it. Dr. Rice and you both do a lot of really good teaching about that. One of the things that I dug into culturally, especially about the Essenes, back in the first century, is that they would have, not necessarily all sects of Essenes, but the Nazarite Essenes specifically, would train their children to meditate by the age of 5 or 6 years old, where they, that picture over your left shoulder would have been something to a child back in that day. I mean, just think about that. Think about that. Here's a bunch of kids running around barefooted in the desert without a pot to pee, so to speak, yet they meditate. And we here in America have a bunch of kids who are barely capable of sitting in a public school throughout a day without completely losing their minds.
Yeah.
Well, and I get to see that. Like we talked earlier, we we have 3 kids in our house right now that we've adopted that have PTSD that Dr. Rice and I have had lots of conversations about.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the nature of a dad is to want to do something about it, right? That they came out of the womb of their biological family carrying multiple generations worth of this stuff, and that it's coming out now in our house here in a way that causes the stuff within us. You know, you think you're doing really, really good, then all of a sudden an 8-year-old kid F-bombs you, and something you thought you dealt with a long time ago goes. Yeah.
Oh, is that how it works? I think so.
Yeah. But without the teaching, I mean, here's what I love about this conversation we're having. We're talking, you know, we have 3 guys sitting here, not young guys with life experiences, sitting here talking about the necessity of being honest with yourself. And, you know, Jim and I called it the Unoffendable Project, but, you know, being honest enough with yourself to go, look, I have this feeling inside of me. Yes, somebody else did something they probably shouldn't have done, right? But why is the pain in me? And what's so great about your teaching and Dr. Rice's teaching is without a true understanding of what Jesus taught about forgiveness, about removing the timber, about what the demon actually is, what casting them out actually is, that energy doesn't get loosed. That energy, you know, it brings to mind to me him saying, what you bind on earth is, you know, what you bind here is bound in heaven. That, you know, you can sit here all day long and be upset about somebody, even in your own house, doing what they probably shouldn't do, right? But until you deal with the pain in your haikala, you can't see the kingdom.
Yeah, Steve and I talk about this all the time, Dale, and people, you know, we live in such a fast-paced society that nobody wants to take the time just to center themselves, to be still, and truly understand that when the other person has to be thinking the way that you want them to think or apologize to you because you've been done wrong, that you've given your power away to the world. And that's a very miserable place to be living when everybody exterior outside of you has to be what you've already preconceived for them to be doing in order for you to have a good day. Like if you don't bring home roses, don't bring home chocolate, you didn't stop by, you didn't call me, whatever it is, you didn't vote for this person, whatever it is, it's amazing how we believe, and this is the sad part, that is the behavior that we model to our youth. These kids who are growing up would not come to this place if they did not see it modeled in their own homes. And so they go to school and they are nothing more than a mini version of what they've witnessed in their home. And so, you know, reading the Essenes and how they taught meditation to their children makes so much sense. It gives them the power to be able to see situations, not react to it, not have to place emotions on it, just watch it go by and let themselves remain in control or remain in peace, which is where rest is. But we, in a society, especially here in the United States, feel like we have to react, we have to protest, we have to make our opinion, we have to make a meme and put it on Facebook, and
stand up for what you believe in.
Yeah, brother, that's it.
Yeah.
We're right, they're wrong, and unless we win this war, it's going to be a miserable place to live. Instead of just going, wow, and how many hours do you waste and anger, stewing in your own anger, your own lower vibrations down there in that place where we love to just, where the pigs love to stay in the mud, instead of raising our vibrations and rising above that situation. Because it doesn't matter where you are, when you take off and you go above the clouds, or you take off during a thunderstorm, and you've traveled many times, Dale, so I'm sure you've experienced taking off in a storm where it's really dark, gloomy, but you get above the clouds, guess what? It's bright. The sun is shining. It always was shining. You had to rise above it. So I always relate that to me and raising our vibration. And I think if, like, people like yourself, Dr. Joe Dispenza, Muji, there's so many people who are out there showing people, pointing people to a, you know, to a different way. Like, you don't have to react just because you see something. You can just go, okay, if you do have a reaction, go into that secret place, find out why you had a reaction. And it's always going to take you back where you had some experience where that started from, and you get a chance to deal with that issue that's never been dealt with.
Yeah. And there's no other way to do it.
Well, and we've been on here an hour, so let's bring this back home to roost in the present moment, because this is,
well, before
you started this.
Go ahead and do that. I want to give Dale a few minutes at the end to show people how they can get. Hopefully, he's got some space for be able to mentor and all that. But go ahead. But go, Steve.
I just want to bring it back to what Dale started in his last video with. Because I don't even think we talked about the actual Aramaic word for evil. And let's really bring this back home to roost in the teaching, or the concept of the eternal present moment, and as opposed to evil. And I'll just let you riff on it, Dale, because it's, you're either in the eternal present moment, and see, this is something I'm thinking about the situation in my house with my kids, because unfortunately they've been with us 6 years, but they still can't be present. So I literally get a lesson in this every day in my house. So it's a great teaching tool for me, to really try to be focused on being present in situations where it's very difficult to do. And especially if people got on the video late. So Dale, just one more time, the Aramaic word for evil, what it means, and what the opposite of it is, and how Jesus taught it.
Well, the word for evil is bisha. Bisha is the way we would say that in Aramaic. Bisha. It means unripe. It means underripe or overripe. And let me explain it in a perfect way. Evil isn't this dark, malevolent force that's going to come and get you. I'm not saying that those forces aren't out there on some level, but what I will say is the way this germinates, the way it starts, evil, you can explain it such as like a banana, like a stone green banana, hard as a rock. Nobody's going to eat that. You almost get a stomach ache just looking at it, let alone eating it. Underripe, that's the word bisha, evil. Overripe, a banana that's black and oily and oozing and there's flies all around it. Overripe, not too many people would want to eat that banana. However, that banana that's like almost like, or like a nectarine, when it's perfectly juicy and fragrant and fertile right now in this moment. One of the ways I explain that to people is, when's the only moment in time you can really judge fruit as ripe? Can I say that this stone green banana is going to be perfectly ripe at exactly 10 a.m. on Sunday morning? No, I can't. Can I say this black, oily, oozing overripe banana was perfectly ripe last Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m.? No, I can't. The only time you can judge ripeness or unripeness or overripeness is right now in this moment. And that when it is actually fertile, you're wholly, fully present in the moment, rather than the fear of some kind of impending future or the regurgitation of some kind of past events that you're interpreting, lost in your thoughts, your psyche, etc. realize that it's all about what is right here and right now. And when you realize that, the fertility, the fertile soil, etc., is when we're able to, again, take care of what's up in this moment, because the next moment will take care of itself. And again, I said this in the beginning, nobody's ever met the next moment because it doesn't exist. You can talk about the past until you're blue in the face. If you can put it in my hand, I'd like to see it. Oh, this is from the past. Well, it's not in the past anymore. It might have been from the past, but now it's in my hand because it's here now. And if you can show me the next moment, I'd like to see that too, but I've never met it. There's only this right here now. And Yeshua was constantly bringing us back into the moment, constantly bringing us back to what's right here and right now, rather than all of the performance prayers that we do.